Montessori is based on child development. It is really very personal and really looks at how to help children develop to be their best selves. What is it that can take place that helps a young child learn to be independent, to make good decisions, to find their place in the world, their place in the family, their place in school, to be comfortable in their own skins.
Our children have a better understanding of the world themselves, how they interact with the world, how they interact with the community. When you look at some of the patterns that are woven into the Montessori environment, you'll see social justice, you'll see peace education, you'll see practical life skills, you'll see respect for one's differences. So you'll see really these things that cultivate a better tomorrow. I see Montessori as the avenue to change this world for the better.
It's a place where children can learn to be leaders without that even being the emphasis. It comes naturally. And so it's non-competitive in the sense that it's not grade-driven. But our students excel because they're naturally curious and get to really pursue their passions. Maria Montessori was a rebel. She was a woman's and children's advocate way back in a time where that was not appropriate. She believed wholeheartedly in children and in their development. She had a passionate belief that children could learn when given the right setting, materials, an opportunity that all children could learn. And so her method of education that was eventually developed was child-centered. It wasn't centered on curriculum. It was centered on child development.
Maria Montessori originally was studying how children in asylums were behaving, and she was particularly interested in their intellectual and emotional developments. Around the time of 1900, she had her first opportunity to co-lead an educational environment, and she spent a lot of time observing them. She was originally interested in psychiatry, but then led to realize that maybe we're approaching education the wrong way. So 1907, Maria had her first classroom. It became known as the Casa di Bambini. And that classroom showed tremendous progress and gains. These are children that were intellectually or developmentally disabled. And she was very interested in showing gains in that area. And it was, so it's on the outskirts of Rome, but it was wildly successful. And by the year 1910, Montessori schools were popping up not only in Italy, but all through the world, including the United States. Maria Montessori was someone who understood that the brain expected to learn through the hands and other senses. That she understood that the children need to experience learning and navigate learning at their own pace and at their own time.
My all-consuming interest in early childhood education really began with my own children. I was a young mother and had a very precocious 2-year-old, and I was looking for a preschool for him when I discovered Montessori. Mark, my firstborn son, was the inspiration for West Side, but when he was old enough to go into elementary school, the solution was to skip him and to advance him in terms of his grade level. And I felt that that was really not appropriate developmentally for him. And so I wanted to see a Montessori school that would embrace all the age levels. And initially I had envisioned it to go through 8th grade. and decided to start my own school, basically because of Mark, but David at the time was a preschooler and was able to take advantage of it. Even though we had a savings account of $1,500, and that was all that we had saved, I felt that it was worth it to take that money to start the school. And I was fortunate to finally find a small church in Sylvania, King of Glory, that would let us rent a couple of little Sunday school rooms to start the school. We had a lot of very engaged parents and families from the beginning who believed in what we were doing and made it happen. We were at the King of Glory Lutheran Church for 5 years. At that point, we were bursting at the seams. We had taken over their classrooms, we'd taken over their sanctuary, and we were still growing. So I went looking for another place and found that the Holly Farm Shopping Center, former Holly Farm Shopping Center on the corner of Bancroft and McCord, was vacant, and they were trying to lease that building. There were many problems associated with that. Biggest thing was that I had kept tuition as low as possible, and we were going under financially. So pulling together all of the families that we could, we raised tuition, we put the school on a secure financial track, and it took a long time, but eventually I was able to take a salary, and we were able to grow the school. In the late 1990s, a small Montessori privately owned school in Perrysburg was having financial difficulties and other difficulties with the state, and they offered to sell the school to us. After 1 year, it was booming. We had no space. We needed more space, and we were fortunate to find a wonderful developer who would help us to build the building and lease it to us, so that we ended up actually with the building in Perrysburg prior to anything on Toledo campus. Everything is in stages. We purchased this first piece of land in the 1980s. We first used what is now our admin space, which was a house. We used that space for the middle school beginning in 1992. So each time we added small spaces, eventually adding the addition here. The first addition was large addition was added in 2001, finished in 2002. We've been adding to that ever since. We built a large section in 2012, which houses all of the younger children in the school, toddlers, preschool, and most of the lower elementary. And then we just finished the last major piece of the building in 2018. We moved in after school year had started, and that was a long-awaited gymnasium, expanded art and music studios, and a tornado safe room that was financed partially with a federal FEMA grant. Today we have over 60,000 square feet on our Toledo campus, and over 37 acres of meadows, woods, ponds, trails, and beautiful outdoor environment. But it's taken a lot of different iterations to pull that all together.
They became a member in 1996. They reached initial accreditation in the spring of 2002, and West Side is now on their third accreditation process. They are one of our lighthouses for quality Montessori.
So this room that we're in right now is our Children's House classroom. That is our 3 to 6. So one thing that's unique to Montessori is our mixed age classroom. So you're going to have children within a 3-year age gap in the same classroom. That teaches a lot of different things. We know that children are not learning the same thing at the exact same time. So when they have the opportunity to see each other and observe, there's a lot of learning that can take place. So when you're a 3-year-old and you're seeing a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old doing really, really big work, That opportunity to observe that work gives that child the confidence, so when it's their turn, they're excited to do it.
We set the environment for the children, but it's really up to the children to come into the classroom and choose the work.
All of our classrooms, the love of learning is evident. It's one of the things I notice right away when I walk into every classroom. You will see students engaged and inspired in their work. You can see the joy that's happening as they're learning that. There's this desire to learn more, this feeling that they want to and are loving what they're learning.
There are several differences between the traditional and the Montessori classroom. One of the things that really stand out to me is that in a Montessori classroom, we do give children that 3-hour work cycle, which is very unique, as opposed to a traditional classroom where maybe all the children are sitting down doing the same project or the same lesson. With Montessori, we follow each individual child. So you might have one child who is working on math, and you might have another child in the classroom who's doing artwork. So it's very unique that you follow each child's interests and entrust the child to the method too. The children are able to make choices. They can choose snack or choose work off the shelf.
Students are learning how to complete a work cycle. So when they choose a work, they have to take it to their rug, which is basically their defined workspace. And they'll start a work and then complete it all the way through the end. And so when they're finished, they'll take that work back to where they found it. That's a life lesson that will stay with them. If you look at a Montessori classroom in comparison to a traditional style classroom, the one thing that you're going to notice is how carefully prepared the classroom is. It's not overwhelming with colors, it's minimal, and it invites the children to do what's most important, and that is the work. So when we talk about sense of order, we talk about organizing our work. So learning how to hear just counting to 100 when you're 4 years old and organizing your work. It's really just teaching children to be patient as well. That perseverance of sticking through and organizing your work and then completing your work once you're finished and then putting it away. It's teaching children to stay with a task and complete a task. Which is really hard for many adults to do. And when you're 3 and 4 and you're learning this skill set, it's so valuable. All of the work on the shelf has a purpose. Before a pencil is even put into a child's hand, for example, they have worked the muscles within the hand by spooning, tonging, and pouring. One of the things that makes Montessori also so unique is our practical life and grace and courtesy curriculum. So children are learning manners and how to respectfully sit at a table with friends.
A lot of people, when they come into the Montessori classroom, the first time they see like the glass pitchers or the glasses, they're like, "You're letting 3-year-olds use glass?" That is something that's very unique to the Montessori method.
We want children to have those real-world experiences, so that when you're using glass, you're getting the weight of it in your hand. You're learning to be careful. You're learning to be cautious. You might need to have 2 hands on that glass to get it from the table to where you're putting it or going to wash it. So it gives them that opportunity to realize that, to experience that.
I think something that's also unique to the Montessori classroom is a lot of times you'll see spills, you'll see children with paint all over themselves, or they're out in the sandbox with water and they're making big mud contraptions, and they get dirty. And children get dirty. That's the way they learn. They need to explore with all their senses. But children become independent. They have a change of clothes here at the classroom. They have a change of shoes. So if they get dirty, it's okay. They go into the bathroom and they change their clothes. They put their dirty clothes in a bag and put it in their backpack.
When the kids are outside playing, there's even so much purpose and thought put into what we have on our playground. We know that Montessori children tend to be more creative, and I think it's just all of the thought, that's put into the classroom as well as their play. We sit on over 37 acres, so even our youngest children who are just learning to master their bodies and walking may take a mile-long walk. They're plenty capable of that, and we give them every opportunity to master whatever skill it may be, if it's an academic skill, if it's a social skill, just their gross motor in their bodies and being aware of that. All of those things really, really matter.
At West Side, when you're in a classroom, you have 2 Montessori trained teachers, and there's no school in the state of Ohio, Montessori school, that can say that. So we have more Montessori trained school teachers than any school in Ohio. And there's a difference. There's a difference between saying you're something and being that. And so that's a big difference. And so you come and observe, you fall in love with it, you want to have your kids here. It's pretty simple.
What's nice about having 2 Montessori trained teachers in a classroom, it enables one teacher to maybe do some observing one day, to collaborate with each other. We're both professionals in the classroom. We have unique experiences that we can bring to the classroom. There are certain Montessori materials that we use in the Montessori environment. The teachers do set up the environment. We're very big on observing children, so if we see that there is a need that some children need to work on their fine motor skills, then we might put out some other works to help them strengthen those areas.
So these are Montessori materials, and each of them is designed very carefully. When you look at sensitive periods, for instance, we're guided by planes of development. And planes of development means that the mind goes through changes. For the first 3 years, the mind may be absorbing. So birth to 3, the child is absorbing as much as they can. And then constructing information from 3 to 6. And then again, we see another cycle with a second plane. So you see 6 to 9, you see a child might want to learn all the presidents' names or all the states. And then 9 to 12, that child is wanting to do something with that information, maybe selling lemonade down the street to help the local animal shelter. So you see this development. But within those planes, we have what guides us as sensitive periods. And that gives us the framework of everything that we do in the classroom. For instance, birth to 7, we have you'll see that everything is ordered. There's a need for order for the child. You'll see mathematic concepts, so you'll see that interwoven. Other important concepts in Montessori that are unique to Montessori are emotional control. And these are things that start early on for the child, provide the strong foundation. So anyway, those sensitive periods really guide everything that we do in the classroom, but each Montessori material is uniquely designed and specifically designed for that learning process.
When I was going through my training and I was seeing these materials and seeing how children could add with these materials, I just had these aha moments. And in my training, there were several of us who brought us to tears because we'd wish that as children we were able to learn in that way. It was so hands-on.
So they are able to touch and to feel work, to do hands-on experiments. They're learning through seeing, hearing, touching, really taking in the environment through all of those modalities.
What I've learned through West Side is that learning from my initial view was having information provided to you, you'd memorize it, and you'd lay it back out in a spelling test or a math test, later that week or 2 weeks later. But it didn't become part of you. It just wasn't internalized. Here, the learning process is the kids going and grabbing it versus having it being sent to them from somebody else. And that type of learning leads to a lifetime of internalizing it and I think carrying it with you. And that's a huge difference. What they learn and come home with it's remarkable. So I'm always learning from them, and whether it's dealing with nature and have I seen this, have I heard of it happens so regularly, and it happens when they're so young. It develops leaders at a very young age. So you develop leadership skills. So that's something we saw as well. You start at age 3. Age 2, by the time you're 4 or 5, you're leading a classroom, and then you cycle that again for a 3-year process. And so those leadership skills are quite remarkable.
In the early 1990s, the early years of the middle school, I received a call at lunchtime from one of the middle school teachers who said, "Lynn, you better get over here fast."
There was some construction going on in the school, and there was an old pond that was going to be filled in, and the middle school students didn't know that it was going to be filled in, and they were not happy when the bulldozer showed up.
the health department had told us that we were not allowed to have the pond, that it was too dangerous, even though the pond had been here forever.
Being middle school Montessori students, they didn't just get upset, they decided to do something about it. So they ran outside and put themselves in between the bulldozer and the pond so that the pond couldn't be filled in.
All of the students were sitting facing the front like this, scowling, very unhappy. And I said, what's up? What's going on? And the first to speak said to me, Lynn, you taught us to respect the land, and what are you doing now? You are raping the land. And of course, I'm standing there like this.
You know, coming from an 8th grader is something that I think at the moment, you know, she was taken aback and thought, okay, I need to deal with this situation. But over the long term, she's like, oh, that's what we want. This is something that she wanted to have students do, was be able to have the confidence to state their views and be able to talk truth to power and be able to come up with problem solve and come up with solutions.
We discussed it and came to a compromise, and the compromise would be that the students would raise the money and build the fence around the pond so that we could save it. They raised the money, they built the fence, and the pond was saved. You have students empowered to speak up for themselves. You have students empowered to figure out what they can do to solve a problem. We take that seriously, and we include students in those discussions, and it empowers them. Basically, our students are empowered.
With Lynn Fisher, this was her dream of getting this whole campus put together and this building complete before she would leave and retire. And so for her, to see her achieve that it made it very worthwhile.
We have some exciting things planned for the future. Right now we're working on developing an outdoor education program. With this outdoor education piece will just fit beautifully with the things that we already do with our studies in botany and ecology. So that is a really exciting piece that's coming soon.
The one thing I'll say about West Side is there's always a continuous improvement process. So there's always going to be efforts to raise funds to improve the program, to improve the experience for the families that attend, and also to make sure that we stay up with the technology that's needed to be delivered in the world.
So as Montessorians, we believe in trusting the Montessori method for the children, and I believe that Lynn has also entrusted the Montessori method in the Montessori community that she has built here at West Side to carry on her legacy.
One of my mom's favorite things is when graduates come back and tell her all of the places that they've been and all of the things that they've done and their accomplishments, and I think that really brings home to my mom what West Side has done for them and impacted their lives. Knowing that she dedicated her whole life to this school, and then to see all this successful people come back and tell her, you know, that it was because of the school that they have been so successful, that, you know, her impact on the world basically is something that is just, it just gets me. She had what I call the 4 things that made it successful. She had the vision, she had the hard work, had this determination, and then the 4th thing is probably the most important, is that she surrounded herself with amazing people. And that's really kind of the secret sauce about how West Side is successful.
I'm very happy with the school. It's in a good place. It has excellent leadership. It has amazing culture, teachers, board, all of it, students. But I don't feel it's mine. I've really moved past that, and I feel that my work is done, and it really belongs to them and to the community now. It's easy to retire, leaving it in the hands of people who want to maintain this exceptional culture. I'm happy that I was able to make my dream come true, that many, many people don't have that opportunity in their lives.